Elena Carter spent 3 years perfecting the art of disappearing inside her own marriage. On the night she finally chose to leave, she walked into a restaurant where monsters wore expensive suits and met the most dangerous one of all. Adrian Volkov didn't offer her escape. He offered her something far more terrifying, the chance to become visible again. What followed wasn't a rescue. It was a reckoning, a secret pregnancy, a husband's ultimatum, and a choice that would drag her from Brooklyn's shadows into a world where protection meant blood and love meant war. If you're watching from your city right now, drop a comment below and tell me where this story is reaching you. Hit that like button, and let's see how far Elena's journey travels across the world. The penthouse smelled like money and loneliness. Elena Carter stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, her reflection ghosting against the city lights 23 stories below. The Cartier watch on her wrist, an anniversary gift from a husband who couldn't remember her coffee order, read 11:47 p.m. 3 years ago today, she'd said yes to a man who'd promised her everything and delivered nothing but expensive furniture and carefully maintained distance. The dining table behind her held the remnants of a meal for two that only one person had touched. Filet mignon gone cold. Wine that had stopped breathing hours ago. A cake from that bakery in Soho with Happy Anniversary scripted across buttercream frosting that was starting to look sad and slightly desperate under the chandelier's clinical light. Her phone sat silent on the marble countertop. No text, no call, no explanation. Just like last year, and the year before that. Elena pressed her palm against the window, feeling the cold seep through the glass. From up here, the people below looked like ants, small, insignificant, easily crushed. She wondered if that's how Marcus saw her, if he saw her at all. Her other hand drifted to her stomach, flat beneath the midnight blue dress she'd bought specifically for tonight. The dress he wouldn't see. The secret he didn't know she was carrying, 6 weeks. That's how long she'd been walking around with this knowledge burning a hole through her chest. 6 weeks of morning sickness she hid in guest bathrooms. 6 weeks of researching prenatal vitamins on her phone during lunch breaks at the consulting firm where she analyzed market trends and pretended her personal life wasn't a disaster. 6 weeks of trying to find the right moment to tell her husband they were going to be parents. Except there was never a right moment with Marcus Carter. There were only interruptions, distractions, and the persistent feeling that she was constantly apologizing for existing in spaces he'd rather keep empty. The apartment fell silent around her. 5,200 square feet of designer minimalism that felt more like a showroom than a home. Everything carefully curated by Marcus's interior designer, a woman named Sienna, who'd looked at Elena exactly once during the entire consultation process and clearly found her unremarkable. The furniture was mid-century modern. The art was important. The whole place screamed successful and meant absolutely nothing. Elena had tried to add warmth, a throw blanket her mother had made, photographs in frames, a bookshelf with actual books instead of decorative objects. Marcus had tolerating her additions for approximately 3 weeks before suggesting, gently, always so gently, that maybe they detracted from the cohesive aesthetic. The blanket disappeared into a closet. The photographs found their way to her office at work. The books got relegated to the guest room nobody ever used. She stopped trying after that. Her phone buzzed. Elena's heart jumped before she could stop it. That pathetic spike of hope that maybe, this time, he'd remembered. That maybe he was calling to apologize, to explain, to acknowledge that 3 years of marriage meant something more than a date on a calendar he never checked. The screen lit up with a text from Vanessa, her only real friend at Sterling and Associates. Still waiting? Elena stared at the message. Vanessa had warned her, told her to make other plans for tonight, to stop setting herself up for disappointment. But Elena had convinced herself this anniversary would be different, that Marcus would remember, that the pattern would break. She typed back. He's working late. 3 dots appeared immediately. Disappeared, appeared again. Elena, come on. I know, Elena replied. I'm fine. You're not fine. Nobody waits alone on their anniversary and calls it fine. Elena set the phone down before Vanessa could press further. She wasn't ready for the conversation that would follow, the one where her friend would tell her what she already knew but couldn't quite bring herself to admit. That Marcus hadn't forgotten, that he simply didn't care, that somewhere along the way she'd become so small and quiet and accommodating that he'd stopped noticing when she was there at all. The pregnancy test was still in her purse. She'd taken it 3 days ago in the bathroom at work, hands shaking so hard she could barely hold the stick steady. 2 pink lines, clear as daylight. Undeniable. She'd driven to 4 different drugstores that afternoon, taking a test at each one. All positive. All screaming the same truth into the silence of public restroom stalls that smelled like industrial cleaner and other people's emergencies. A baby. Elena had always wanted children, had spent years imagining what kind of mother she'd be, what her kids would look like, whether they'd inherit her dark hair or have Marcus's sharp features. She'd pictured Sunday mornings and tiny shoes and all the messy, beautiful chaos that came with building a family. But that fantasy had required a partner who was present, who cared, who looked at her like she mattered. Marcus looked at her like she was a fixture, something that came with the apartment, maintained but not cherished, there when needed, invisible when not. And now she was supposed to bring a child into this? Raise a baby in this cold, perfect apartment with a father who worked 16-hour days and couldn't remember to come home for dinner? Who scheduled their intimacy like business meetings and treated affection like a quarterly review he was too busy to attend? Elena's chest tightened. The city blurred beyond the window as tears finally came, hot and furious and 3 years overdue. She grabbed her purse and walked out. No note, no explanation. Marcus wouldn't notice anyway. The streets of Manhattan absorbed her like they absorbed everyone, another anonymous figure moving through the late-night sprawl of a city that never stopped. Elena walked without direction, letting her feet carry her through neighborhoods that shifted from gleaming high-rises to shadowed side streets where the real New York lived. Her heels clicked against pavement. The October air bit through her dress, but she welcomed the cold. It felt real, grounding, unlike the climate-controlled perfection of the penthouse, where everything stayed exactly 72 degrees, regardless of season. She ended up in a part of the city she didn't recognize. The buildings here were older, brick and stone instead of glass and steel. The restaurants were the kind that didn't advertise, that you only found if you knew where to look. Small awnings, unmarked doors, the sort of places where deals got made and secrets got kept. Elena stopped in front of a heavy wooden door set into a building that looked like it had been standing since before she was born. No sign, no menu posted in the window, just a brass handle worn smooth by decades of hands and a warm glow seeping through the gap beneath the door. She should keep walking, go back to the apartment, wait for Marcus like a good wife. Instead, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The restaurant was small, intimate, the kind of space that held maybe 15 tables, all of them occupied by people who looked like they belonged to a world Elena had only glimpsed in movies. Men in suits that cost more than her monthly salary. Women wearing jewelry that could fund a small country. The air thick with cigar smoke and expensive cologne, and the particular silence that came when everyone in a room was conducting business they didn't want recorded. Every head turned when she entered. Elena froze. Her dress, the one she'd thought looked elegant under the penthouse lights, suddenly felt cheap. Wrong. Her makeup, carefully applied hours ago, probably showed the tracks of her tears. Her hair, pinned up in what she'd hoped was sophisticated, was definitely falling apart. She didn't belong here. A man appeared at her elbow. Not a waiter. Something else. Security, maybe. Built like a wall and wearing a suit that barely contained him. "Private event," he said. His voice was polite. His eyes were not. "I'm sorry." Elena took a step back. "I didn't know. I'll just let her stay." The voice came from the back of the room, deep, accented in a way Elena couldn't quite place. Russian, maybe, or Ukrainian, the kind of voice that didn't ask. It stated. The wall of a man stepped aside immediately. Elena's eyes tracked across the restaurant to find the speaker. He sat alone at a corner table separated from the others by shadow and distance, and something else. An invisible boundary that everyone else in the room seemed to respect. Even the smoke didn't drift his direction. He was younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s. Dark hair, dark eyes, features that looked carved rather than born. The kind of face that made you think of old paintings in museums, beautiful in a dangerous way. Untouchable. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Every instinct Elena possessed screamed at her to leave. to apologize and back out of this place and forget she'd ever walked through that door. This man wasn't safe. Everything about him, from the way he held himself to the way everyone else in the room refused to look directly at him, announced that he was exactly the kind of person sensible women avoided. But Elena was tired of being sensible, tired of being small and quiet and carefully invisible, tired of doing everything right and ending up alone anyway. She walked to his table and sat down. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Not because he was threatening, though Elena suspected he could be very easily, but because he looked at her like he actually saw her, like she wasn't just taking up space that could be better used for something else. "You're lost," he said. Not a question. "I'm exactly where I chose to be," Elena replied. The words came out stronger than she felt. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "Bad night? Bad 3 years." He nodded like that made perfect sense. Like walking into random restaurants and sitting down with dangerous strangers was a completely reasonable response to a failing marriage. A waiter appeared with a glass of red wine, set it in front of Elena without being asked, disappeared before she could say she didn't order anything. "I can't," Elena said, staring at the wine. Her hand moved to her stomach without thinking. The man's eyes tracked the gesture, understood immediately. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them. "Water, then," he said. The waiter reappeared with mineral water in a crystal glass. Lemon, ice, perfect. Elena took a sip. The water was cold enough to hurt. "Who are you?" "Adrian Volkov." He said it like she should recognize the name. She didn't. "Elena Carter." "You're married." He glanced at her left hand. The diamond ring Marcus had chosen, too big, too flashy, trying too hard, caught the candlelight. "Technically, but not practically." Elena met his eyes. They were black coffee dark, unreadable. "Does it matter?" "That depends on why you're here instead of with your husband, on what—" He paused, took in her dress, her makeup, the general air of someone who'd gotten dressed up for something that didn't happen. "Your anniversary?" "3rd, Elena said. The admission felt like defeat. "He's a fool." The certainty in Adrian's voice caught her off guard. He didn't know her, didn't know Marcus, didn't know anything about their marriage or the 1,000 small cuts that had bled it dry, but he said it like it was fact, like any man who'd let her walk out alone tonight deserved exactly that label. "You don't know him," Elena said. "I know his type." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "Important job, important friends." So busy building his empire, he forgot to notice the person holding it up. Elena's throat tightened. "You're making assumptions." "Am I wrong?" She looked away. The restaurant blurred. Not again. She was not going to cry in front of this stranger who saw too much and said things that cut too close to truths she'd been avoiding. "He's not a bad person," Elena said quietly. "He's just busy, distracted. It's not his fault that—" "Stop." Elena's head snapped up. Adrian was leaning forward now, elbows on the table, his full attention locked on her in a way that made it hard to breathe. "Don't do that," he said. "Don't make excuses for someone who can't be bothered to show up for you. You're carrying his child and spending your anniversary alone in a strange restaurant. That's not a scheduling conflict. That's a choice." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." His voice was cold now, controlled. "I understand that you've spent years making yourself smaller so he'd have more room. That you've convinced yourself his neglect is somehow your fault. That if you were just more understanding, more patient, more invisible, he'd finally see you." Elena's hands were shaking. "Stop." "Why? Because it's true?" "Because you don't know me." Her voice cracked. "You don't know anything about my life or my marriage or what I've been through. You've known me for 5 minutes and you think you can— I can see you're pregnant and alone and about to break." Adrian's voice gentled, but his eyes stayed sharp. "I can see you walked in here looking for something. Maybe just a place to breathe. Maybe something more. Either way, you're here, which means some part of you already knows what you need to do." Elena stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Every eye in the restaurant turned toward them again. "This was a mistake," she said. "I should go." Adrian didn't move. "Where? Back to an empty apartment? To a husband who won't notice you were gone?" That's not... Elena stopped. Because it was. It was exactly that. Marcus wouldn't notice. Wouldn't ask where she'd been, or why she'd left, or if she was okay. He'd come home at 2 in the morning, maybe 3, and slide into bed next to her without a word. In the morning, he'd be gone before she woke up. The pattern would continue. The silence would stretch, and she'd keep pretending it was normal. "Sit down," Adrian said. Not a command, an invitation. Elena should leave, should walk out of this place and never look back, should go home and be the good wife who didn't make scenes or sit with strange men or question the choices that had led her here. She sat down. Adrian gestured to the waiter who brought food without being asked. Pasta, bread. Simple things that smelled like comfort and tasted like someone actually cared whether she ate. They sat in silence while Elena picked at the meal. Adrian didn't push, didn't ask questions, just existed across from her like a fixed point in a world that wouldn't stop spinning. "Why did you let me stay?" Elena finally asked. Adrian considered the question. "You looked like someone who needed to be seen." "That's it?" "That's everything." Elena set down her fork. "I don't understand you." "You don't need to. Everyone else in here is terrified of you." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I'm dangerous." He said it matter-of-factly, the way someone else might say they were an accountant or a teacher, just a statement of occupation. "Are you going to hurt me?" "No." "How do I know that?" "You don't." Adrian's expression didn't change. "But you're still here, which means you've already decided to trust me more than you trust the life you walked away from tonight." Elena's chest hurt. "I can't just leave him. It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because She stopped, tried to find the words. "Because we're married? Because I made promises? Because starting over is terrifying and I don't know if I'm strong enough to..." "You walked into a room full of criminals and sat down with a man you'd never met," Adrian interrupted. "You're already stronger than you think." "That's different." "How?" Elena opened her mouth, closed it. She didn't have an answer. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out. A text from Marcus, time-stamped 1:17 a.m. "Working late. Don't wait up." Elena stared at the message. 4 words, sent hours after she'd needed them, containing exactly 0 acknowledgement that today was supposed to matter. She showed Adrian the screen. He read it. His jaw tightened. "When are you going to tell him about the baby?" "I don't know." "What do you think he'll say?" Elena's hands twisted in her lap. "I think he'll ask if I'm sure. I think he'll say the timing is bad, that he's got a big project at work, and maybe we should wait. Maybe we should think about whether this is really what we want right now." "And what will you say?" "I'll say, of course, that I understand, that we can wait." Her voice broke. "And then I'll make an appointment I don't want to keep and erase the one thing in my life that's actually mine." The words hung in the air between them, true and terrible, and finally spoken out loud. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Is that what you want?" "No." The answer came immediately, certain. "No. I want this baby. I want to be a mother. I want..." She stopped, swallowed hard. "I want a life where I matter to someone, where I'm not just background noise." "Then take it." "I can't just..." "Why not?" Adrian leaned forward again. "What exactly are you holding on to? A marriage that's already over? A man who can't even remember your anniversary? The fantasy that if you're patient enough, small enough, quiet enough, he'll suddenly become the person you need him to be?" Elena's eyes burned. "It's not that easy. It's exactly that easy. You stand up, you walk out, you choose yourself. And then what? I'm 26 years old, I work 60 hours a week at a job I hate. I have no family in the city, no support system." "No, you'll have protection," Adrian said simply. Elena froze. "What?" "You stay in this marriage, eventually your husband will find out about the baby. And based on what you've told me, he'll pressure you to get rid of it. Maybe gently, maybe not. But he'll push until you break or he gets his way." Adrian's voice was flat, factual. "You leave. You'll need somewhere safe to go while you figure out what comes next." "And you're offering that?" Elena couldn't keep the disbelief out of her voice. "Why? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why would you possibly? Because I've seen what happens when women stay in situations that are slowly killing them. Something dark flickered across Adrian's face. Old pain, ancient rage. I've watched someone I cared about disappear piece by piece into a marriage that destroyed her. I won't watch it happen again. Elena's breath caught. Who was she? Someone who deserved better. Adrian's voice was final. Case closed. Just like you. I'm not your responsibility. No, but you could be under my protection. There's a difference. I don't understand what you're offering. Safety, resources, time to breathe and figure out what you actually want instead of what everyone else has decided you should accept. Adrian pulled a card from his pocket, set it on the table between them. Heavy cardstock, no company name, just a phone number embossed in silver. You call that number, someone will answer, always, day or night. You need to disappear. We make it happen. You need support. You get it. You need your husband to understand that you're not negotiable. We make that clear. Elena stared at the card. What's the cost? Smart question. Adrian almost smiled. No cost, no strings, no expectations beyond the fact that you use the protection to actually build something instead of just surviving. Nobody does something for nothing. I'm not nobody. He stood. Think about it. Keep the card. If you decide to go back to your husband and make it work, I hope it works out. But if you decide you're done being invisible, he gestured to the card. Call. Adrian walked toward the back of the restaurant, disappeared through a door Elena hadn't noticed before, gone as suddenly as he'd appeared. Elena sat alone at the table, the card burning a hole through the wood between her hands. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. We'll be home late tomorrow too, big presentation. You understand? Not a question. A statement. An assumption that of course she'd understand, that she always understood. That understanding was her entire job. Elena picked up the card, slipped it into her purse next to the pregnancy test. Then she stood up and walked out into the night. The apartment was dark when she got back, empty, exactly as she'd left it. Elena kicked off her heels and walked through rooms that felt more like a museum than a home. Everything perfect, everything cold, everything chosen by someone else. She found herself in the guest room, the one where her books had ended up, the one Marcus never entered because it didn't fit his aesthetic. Elena pulled out her phone and pulled up her photos. Scrolled back through 3 years of marriage, looking for something. Proof that it hadn't always been like this, that there had been warmth once. Love. Something worth fighting for. The photos told a different story. Every picture was the same. Marcus looking at his phone, Marcus in the middle of a conversation with someone else. Marcus present in body but absent in every way that mattered. And beside him, Elena, smiling, trying, getting smaller with every passing month until she was barely visible at all. She stopped on a photo from their honeymoon. Marcus was checking his email on the beach. Elena was alone in the frame, staring at the camera with an expression she barely recognized now. Hope. That's what it was. The belief that things would get better, that marriage would soften him, that love would be enough. 3 years later, she knew better. Elena set down her phone and pulled out the pregnancy test, stared at those 2 pink lines that represented everything she wanted and everything Marcus would ask her to give up. Her hand moved to her stomach, flat still, but not for long. I'm going to keep you, she whispered to the silence. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to keep you. The words felt like a promise, like a vow more sacred than the ones she'd made in a courthouse 3 years ago with a man who'd already been checking his watch. Elena went to bed alone. Again. She left the light on in the living room so Marcus could find his way when he eventually came home. Left a plate of food in the refrigerator he probably wouldn't eat. Maintained the careful routines of a marriage that existed only on paper. But in her purse, next to her keys and lipstick and the pregnancy test she couldn't quite throw away, sat a card with a phone number and the promise of a different kind of life. She fell asleep with her hand on her stomach and Adrian Volkov's words echoing in her head. You're already stronger than you think. Marcus came home at 3:47 a.m. Elena heard him moving through the apartment, heard the refrigerator open and close, heard him brush his teeth in the master bathroom, heard him slide into bed beside her like this was normal. Like leaving your wife alone on your anniversary was just another Tuesday. She kept her breathing even, pretended to sleep. Marcus settled into his side of the bed, the side farthest from her, the side that might as well be in a different apartment. Within minutes, he was snoring softly. Elena stared at the ceiling, felt the weight of the ring on her finger, the weight of 3 years of trying, the weight of the choice that was slowly crushing her. She waited until she was sure Marcus was deep asleep. Then she got up, walked to the bathroom, and locked the door behind her. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, pale, tired, wearing an expression she'd seen on other women and promised herself she'd never wear. The look of someone who'd lost themselves so gradually they didn't notice until there was almost nothing left to find. Elena gripped the edge of the sink, made herself look, really look. "What are you doing?" she whispered to the woman in the mirror. "What are you waiting for?" The woman didn't answer, just stared back with haunted eyes and 3 years of silence. Elena's hand shook as she pulled out her phone, pulled up Marcus's text from earlier. "We'll be home late tomorrow too. Tomorrow." And the day after that. And every day after, until she finally accepted that this was it. This was the marriage. This was her life. Small and quiet and carefully arranged to disturb nothing and no one. She opened a new message, started typing. "We need to talk." Her thumb hovered over send. This was it. The moment. Once she sent this, things would change. Maybe for better. Maybe for worse. But they would change. Elena hit send. Then she sat on the bathroom floor and waited for morning. Marcus didn't respond to her text. Elena watched her phone through breakfast, a meal she ate alone while Marcus showered and dressed and gathered his things for a full day of meetings he'd already told her would run late. He kissed her forehead on his way out, distracted, already thinking about whatever presentation or client or deal demanded his attention today. "Have a good day," he said. Not "I love you," not "How are you feeling?" not "Sorry about last night." Just the same generic parting words he'd give a colleague or a stranger. Elena watched him go, heard the door close, heard the elevator ding, heard silence rush in to fill all the spaces he'd left empty. She got dressed for work, put on the professional armor of pencil skirts and blazers that helped her disappear into boardrooms and conference calls. Armor that had stopped feeling like power and started feeling like camouflage. At Sterling and Associates, she was good at her job. Great, even. She analyzed market trends, wrote reports that executives actually read, had a reputation for seeing angles other people missed. Her work mattered. Her insights had saved clients millions, none of which meant anything when she came home to an apartment that felt like a waiting room. Vanessa caught her in the break room around 10. "You look terrible," Vanessa said. No preamble, just honest concern from the one person at the firm who treated her like a human instead of a resource. "Thanks." Elena poured coffee she wasn't supposed to drink. Decaf, tasteless, safe for the pregnancy Marcus didn't know about. "He didn't show, did he?" Elena stared into her mug. "He was working." "Elena, I don't want to talk about it." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Then, "What are you going to do?" "About what?" "About the fact that you're married to a man who treats you like an afterthought." Vanessa's voice was gentle, careful. "About the baby you're carrying that you're too scared to tell him about because you know exactly what he'll say." Elena's head snapped up. "How did you? You stopped drinking coffee 3 weeks ago. You've been eating crackers at your desk. You disappeared into the bathroom twice yesterday looking green." Vanessa crossed her arms. "I'm your friend. I notice things." "I'm going to tell him," Elena said. "I just need to find the right time. There's never going to be a right time with Marcus. You know that. He's my husband. He's a placeholder." Vanessa's voice was matter of fact. "You married him because you were young, and he seemed stable, and you wanted to believe that successful meant good. But he's not good, Elena. He's just rich and busy and completely oblivious to the fact that he has a wife who's disappearing right in front of him. That's not fair. Isn't it?" Vanessa leaned against the counter. "When's the last time he asked about your day, your work, your life? When's the last time he looked at you like he actually saw you?" Elena's throat closed, because she couldn't remember. Couldn't pinpoint a single moment in recent memory when Marcus had looked at her with anything resembling real attention. I met someone last night, Elena heard herself say. Vanessa's eyebrows shot up. What? Not like that, Elena set down her coffee. I walked into this restaurant, and there was this man. And he looked at me like I was actually there, like I existed. And he said things that I can't stop thinking about. What kind of things? That I deserve better, that I'm stronger than I think, that choosing myself isn't selfish. Elena pulled out the card, showed it to Vanessa. He offered me protection, said if I needed to leave, he'd help. Vanessa took the card, examined it. Just a phone number, no name. Adrian Volkov. Vanessa's face went pale. Adrian Volkov? The Adrian Volkov? You know him? Everyone knows him, or knows of him anyway. Vanessa handed the card back like it might bite. Elena, he's not someone you want to be involved with. Why? Who is he? He runs half the underground in this city. Import/export business that everyone knows is a front for things nobody talks about. Vanessa lowered her voice. He's dangerous. Like actually dangerous. Not dangerous sexy. Dangerous people disappear. Elena stared at the card. He didn't seem dangerous. That's how people like him work. They seem charming, helpful. And then you owe them something, and it's too late to walk away. He said there were no strings. There are always strings, Elena, especially with men like that. Elena slipped the card back into her purse. He's the only person who's offered me anything. Marcus hasn't even responded to my text. What text? I told him we needed to talk. Vanessa checked her watch. That was 6 hours ago? 7. And nothing? Elena shook her head. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. I'm texting you the number for a divorce attorney. She's good, discreet. She'll walk you through your options. I'm not getting divorced. Not today, maybe, but eventually. Vanessa met her eyes. You know how this ends, Elena. The only question is whether you wait until there's nothing left of you to salvage or you walk away while you still remember who you used to be. Marcus finally responded at 2:34 p.m. What did you want to talk about? Elena stared at the text. 7 words, hours late, containing exactly 0 curiosity or concern. She typed, Can we have dinner tonight? Actually sit down and talk? The response came faster this time. Can't. Big client dinner. Tomorrow? Elena's hands clenched around her phone. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. The promised day that never actually arrived. It's important, she typed. Everything's important. Can it wait until the weekend? She could picture him as he wrote that, sitting in a meeting, half paying attention to her text while making important eye contact with important people about important things. Her needs somewhere at the bottom of a very long list of priorities. I'm pregnant, Elena typed. Her thumb hovered over send. This was it. The moment that would change everything. Once he knew, there was no going back. No more hiding. No more pretending. She deleted the message. Typed instead, We'll talk this weekend. Perfect. Love you. 2 words tossed at the end of a conversation like spare change. Like an afterthought. Like something he'd learned to say but forgotten to mean. Elena set down her phone and went back to work. Analyzed market trends for companies that would never know her name. Wrote reports that would make other people money. Did her job with the same careful precision she brought to everything, while the pregnancy test in her purse burned like evidence of a crime she hadn't committed yet. At 6 o'clock, she left the office. Took the subway back to a neighborhood she could barely afford on her own, but that Marcus insisted on because it impressed the right people. Rode the elevator to the 23rd floor. Let herself into an apartment that smelled like expensive nothing. Marcus's suit jacket was on the chair. He'd come home, changed, left again. Elena stood in the doorway and felt something break. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet crack. The sound of the last thread holding her together finally giving way. She walked to the bedroom, opened her closet, started pulling out clothes. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Elena almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena Carter. The voice was professional, female, crisp. Yes? This is Doctor. Morrison's office calling about your appointment on Tuesday. We need to confirm. I didn't make an appointment, Elena said. A pause. I'm showing here that Marcus Carter called this morning to schedule a consultation for you regarding a pregnancy termination. The world tilted. I'm sorry, Elena said carefully. Could you repeat that? Your husband called to make an appointment for a termination procedure. We have you down for Tuesday at 2. We'll need you to... Elena hung up. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. Marcus knew. Somehow he knew. And instead of talking to her, instead of asking what she wanted, he'd made an appointment to get rid of their baby like it was a problem to be solved, an inconvenience to be erased. She didn't remember pulling out the card, didn't remember dialing the number. But suddenly her phone was ringing and a voice was answering. Yes? This is Elena Carter, she said. Her voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking. I need help. One moment. The line went quiet. Then Adrian's voice, clear and immediate. Elena, he made an appointment. The words tumbled out. My husband. He knows about the baby and he made an appointment to... Her voice broke. I never said yes. I never agreed to anything. He just decided and... Where are you? Home. I'm at home. I can't stay here. I can't... Address. Elena gave it. Pack a bag, Adrian said. Someone will be there in 20 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone else. I don't even know where I'm going. Somewhere safe, I promise. A pause. Elena, did he hurt you? No, not physically. He just... She couldn't finish. 20 minutes, Adrian said again. Can you hold on that long? Elena looked around the apartment, at the perfect furniture and the perfect art and the perfect life that had been slowly suffocating her for 3 years. Yes, she said. I can hold on. She hung up and started packing. Elena's hands moved on autopilot, pulling clothes from hangers and shoving them into the leather overnight bag Marcus had bought her for a business trip she'd never taken. Jeans, sweaters, underwear, the practical things you grabbed when your life was falling apart, and you had exactly 20 minutes to decide what pieces of yourself were worth saving. She stood in front of her closet, staring at the row of designer dresses Marcus preferred her to wear. Elegant, understated, the kind of clothes that helped her blend into the background of his professional life. She left them all hanging. In the bathroom, she grabbed her toothbrush, then stopped. Her reflection caught her mid-motion, and for a second she didn't recognize the woman staring back. When had she started looking so tired? When had the light gone out behind her eyes? The pregnancy vitamins were hidden behind the skincare products Marcus's assistant had ordered for her last Christmas. Elena dumped them into her makeup bag along with the positive test she'd been keeping like evidence. Evidence of what? She wasn't sure anymore. That she existed? That something growing inside her was proof she was still capable of creating life even while her own was dying by inches? Her phone buzzed. Marcus, where are you? I'm on my way home. We need to talk. Elena's stomach dropped. He never came home early, never interrupted client dinners, never prioritized her over work unless something was wrong. He knew she knew. Her fingers flew across the screen. I'm at Vanessa's. Girls' night. Be back late. The lie came easier than it should have. 3 years of marriage had taught her that sometimes survival meant becoming someone she didn't recognize. We need to talk tonight. This is important. Tomorrow, Elena typed. I promise. She didn't wait for his response, just grabbed her bag and walked out of the bedroom that had never felt like hers anyway. The living room stopped her. In the harsh overhead lighting, everything looked exactly like what it was. A carefully staged set for a life that existed only on paper. The photos on the mantel were from their wedding, both of them smiling for cameras while standing just far enough apart that even the photographer had commented on it. The art on the walls was tasteful and expensive and meant absolutely nothing. The furniture was the kind you saw in magazines and never actually sat on. Elena had spent 3 years trying to make this place feel like home, adding warmth, adding personality, adding herself. Marcus had spent 3 years erasing her additions until there was nothing left but his vision of perfection. She walked to the kitchen and opened the drawer where she kept the takeout menus. Buried underneath was a small wooden box her mother had given her before she died. Inside was the only jewelry Elena actually cared about, her grandmother's wedding ring. Simple gold band, worn smooth by decades of love and loss and stubbornness. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Don't let any man make you forget who you are, mija, not even one you love. Elena slipped the ring onto her right hand, left Marcus's ostentatious diamond on her left. The difference between them felt symbolic in a way that made her chest ache. A knock at the door made her jump. She checked the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway. Late 20s, maybe. Dark suit, the kind of neutral expression that came from years of practice. Behind her, barely visible, was the bulk of a man who looked like he ate problems for breakfast. Elena opened the door. Mrs. Carter? The woman's voice was professional, controlled. I'm here for Mr. Volkov. I didn't think you'd actually come, Elena admitted. Mr. Volkov's word is absolute. She gestured to the bag. Is that everything? I don't even know where I'm going. Somewhere safe. That's all you need to know right now. The woman stepped aside. We should leave. Your husband just entered the parking garage. Elena's blood went cold. How do you... We've been monitoring the building since you called. He's in the elevator. She glanced at her watch. You have maybe 90 seconds before he reaches this floor. Elena grabbed her purse and the bag and followed the woman into the hallway. The man fell into step behind them, moving with the kind of silent efficiency that suggested violence was a language he spoke fluently. They took the stairs. Elena's heels clicked against concrete as they descended, the sound echoing in the narrow stairwell. 3 flights down, the woman pushed open a door that led to a service corridor Elena had never known existed. This way. They moved through the building's skeleton, the parts residents never saw. Maintenance areas, storage rooms, the mechanical guts of a luxury high-rise. Finally, they emerged in a loading area where a black SUV waited, engine running. The woman opened the back door. Get in. Elena hesitated. This was insane. She was getting into a car with strangers who worked for a man Vanessa had called dangerous. A man who ran criminal operations under the cover of legitimate business. A man she'd known for less than 12 hours. But behind her was an apartment where her husband had made decisions about her body without her consent. Where she'd spent 3 years shrinking herself down to nothing. Where the future held nothing but more silence and more erasure, and eventually the loss of the one thing that was actually hers. Elena got in the car. The woman slid in beside her. The man took the front passenger seat. The driver, another wall of muscle in an expensive suit, pulled out without a word. Where are we going? Elena asked. Mr. Volkov's estate, about an hour north of the city. The woman pulled out a tablet. You'll have your own quarters, privacy, security, everything you need while you figure out your next steps. Why is he doing this? The woman looked up from her tablet. Her expression shifted slightly, revealing something that might have been sympathy. You'd have to ask him that yourself. But if I had to guess, he doesn't like men who hurt women. And your husband hurt you. That's enough. Elena stared out the window as Manhattan blurred past. The city she'd called home for 6 years suddenly felt foreign. Or maybe she was the foreign thing. Maybe she'd been slowly becoming a stranger to herself and was only now noticing how far she'd drifted. Her phone buzzed continuously. Marcus calling, then texting, then calling again. Where are you? Elena, this isn't funny. We need to talk about the baby. I know you're upset, but you're not thinking clearly. Call me back. Now. The messages got progressively more demanding, more frustrated. The tone shifting from concern to irritation to barely concealed anger. Elena watched them pile up and felt nothing. Just a strange, distant numbness where her feelings used to be. You should turn that off, the woman said quietly. They can track you through it. They? Your husband, his lawyers. Anyone he's paying attention to keep tabs on you. She held out her hand. I can give you a clean phone, untraceable. You keep your number but route it through our security. Elena handed over her phone, watched the woman do something technical with cables and tablets. Within minutes, she had a new device that looked identical to her old one, but felt like a lifeline to a different existence. Anyone you trust? The woman asked. Someone you want to be able to reach you? Vanessa, my friend from work. Number? Elena recited it. The woman programmed it in. She's cleared for contact. Anyone else calls, it routes through a filter first. We screen it. Decide if it's safe. The woman met her eyes. You're under our protection now. That means we take threats seriously. All of them. Marcus isn't violent. There are a lot of ways to hurt someone without ever raising a hand, the woman said. And men who feel entitled to control women's choices get dangerous when that control slips. Your husband scheduled an abortion without your consent. That's not a man who respects boundaries. Elena's hand moved to her stomach. The baby was barely there yet, just a cluster of cells smaller than a grape. But it was hers, her choice, her future. And Marcus had tried to erase it like it was a line item on a spreadsheet. "What's your name?" Elena asked. "Irina." "How long have you worked for Adrian?" 8 years. "Do you like him?" Irina considered the question. "Mr. Volkov is fair, loyal to the people who work for him. He pays well, protects his own, and doesn't ask for anything he wouldn't do himself." She paused. "And he has a code. Doesn't hurt women or children. Doesn't deal in drugs or trafficking. Keeps his business clean compared to others in his world." "That's a low bar." "Maybe, but it's his bar and he holds it." Irina looked out the window as the city gave way to suburbs. "You could do a lot worse for protection." They drove in silence after that. Elena watched the landscape change from concrete to green, from high-rises to houses to estates hidden behind walls and gates. The further they got from Manhattan, the easier it became to breathe. An hour later, they turned onto a private road. Trees lined both sides, creating a tunnel of autumn leaves. At the end sat a house that was more compound than residence, stone and glass, modern but not cold, surrounded by grounds that looked professionally maintained but not ostentatiously perfect. Guards nodded them through the gate. The SUV pulled up to a wide entrance where Adrian waited, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd stepped out of a painting titled "Dangerous Men Who Save Broken Women." Elena's door opened. She stepped out onto gravel that crunched under her feet. Adrian walked toward her. Up close, in daylight, he looked different, harder. The kind of man whose face revealed exactly nothing unless he wanted it to. "You came," he said. "I didn't have anywhere else to go." "That's not true. You had a dozen options. You chose this one." He gestured toward the house. "Come on. We'll get you settled." Inside, the house was nothing like Elena expected. It was warm, lived in, books on shelves, art that looked chosen by someone who actually cared about it rather than someone trying to impress. A dog, some kind of massive German shepherd, bounded up to greet them. "That's Sasha," Adrian said. "She's friendly. Too friendly, according to the security team." Elena reached out. Sasha pressed her enormous head into Elena's palm, tail wagging like they were already best friends. "She likes you," Adrian observed. "Dogs are good judges of character." "Usually." Adrian led her through the house. "Your rooms are this way. Private entrance, bathroom, sitting area. You want company? Come find me. You want to be left alone? Nobody will bother you." He opened a door to a suite that was bigger than Elena's first apartment. Tasteful, comfortable. The kind of space that suggested someone had actually thought about what a person might need when their world was falling apart. "There's clothes in the closet," Adrian said. "Different sizes. Take what fits. Kitchen stocked. You're hungry. Eat. You need anything else? Irina will handle it." Elena set down her bag, turned to face him. "Why are you doing this?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he crossed to the window, looking out over the grounds. "I told you last night. I watched someone I cared about disappear into a marriage that killed her. Slowly. Quietly. Until there was nothing left but the outline of who she used to be. What happened to her?" "She died." His voice was flat. Her husband was a respected businessman, pillar of the community. Everyone loved him. Behind closed doors, he controlled every aspect of her life. What she wore, who she talked to, where she went. When she got pregnant, he was furious, said it would ruin his career trajectory. She had the baby anyway, thought maybe it would soften him. Adrian's jaw tightened. 3 months later, she drove her car off a bridge. They called it an accident. I knew better. Elena's breath caught. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be alive." He turned to face her. "Be so aggressively alive that when your husband realizes what he lost, it's too late to do anything about it. I'm not trying to make him regret anything. No, you're trying to survive. That's harder. Adrian moved toward the door. Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow about what comes next. Adrian? He stopped. The woman you lost. Did you love her? His expression shifted, revealed something raw. She was my sister. Then he was gone, door closing softly behind him, leaving Elena alone in a stranger's house with nothing but the clothes on her back and the baby she was fighting to keep. She sat on the bed, let herself fall backward onto blankets that smelled like lavender and something else. Safety, maybe. Or just the absence of the constant low-level anxiety that had become her baseline. Her phone, the new one, buzzed. Vanessa. Where are you? Marcus is calling me. Says you're missing. Elena stared at the message. Missing. Like she was a lost object instead of a person who'd finally chosen to leave. I'm safe, she typed back. Can't tell you where. But I'm okay. Did you leave him? Yes. Thank God. Are you with that Volkov guy? Elena hesitated, then, yes. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Be careful. Please. I will. Call me tomorrow? I will, Elena typed again. Then she turned off the phone and let the silence swallow her whole. She must have fallen asleep because when she opened her eyes, the room was dark and someone was knocking softly on her door. Come in, Elena called, her voice rough. Irina entered with a tray. Thought you might be hungry. You didn't eat before you left. The smell of food hit Elena's stomach, which responded with immediate enthusiasm. She sat up. What time is it? Almost 9. Irina set the tray on the small table near the window. Soup, bread. Nothing heavy. You've had a shock. Best to eat light. Elena joined her at the table. The soup was some kind of chicken and vegetable combination that tasted like someone's grandmother had made it. Warm, comforting, real. This is amazing, Elena said. Adrian's housekeeper. She's been with him since he was a kid. Thinks everyone is too skinny and needs feeding. Irina smiled slightly. She's going to love you. Pregnant women are her specialty. How many pregnant women has Adrian brought here? You're the first. Irina poured water from a pitcher. But Maria, the housekeeper, she raised 4 kids of her own, has strong opinions about prenatal nutrition. Elena ate in silence for a moment. Then, can I ask you something? Sure. What does Adrian actually do? I know Vanessa said he runs some kind of import-export business, but he runs a legitimate shipping company, Irina said carefully. Very successful. International contracts. Employs about 300 people legally. Everything above board. And the other stuff. Irina met her eyes. What other stuff? The part that makes everyone afraid of him. Mr. Volkov has connections, resources. People owe him favors. He owes others. That's how business works at a certain level. She paused. Does it matter? You're here because your husband violated your trust and your body autonomy. Adrian offered you protection. Whether he's a saint or a sinner doesn't change the fact that you needed help, and he provided it. It matters if I'm trading one controlling man for another. Adrian isn't your husband. He's not trying to control you. He's trying to give you space to breathe while you figure out your next move. Irina stood. But if you want my advice, don't waste energy worrying about Adrian's moral complexity. Worry about getting yourself somewhere stable. The rest will sort itself out. After Irina left, Elena finished eating. Then she showered in a bathroom that had actual water pressure and toiletries that smelled like eucalyptus instead of the designer nonsense Marcus's assistant ordered. She put on one of the oversized sweaters from the closet, soft, worn, comfortable, and stood in front of the mirror. For the first time in 3 years, she looked like herself. The next morning, Elena woke to sunlight and the sound of birds. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. Marcus. The appointment. The escape. Adrian. She checked her phone. 17 missed calls from Marcus. 42 text messages, 3 voicemails. She deleted them all without reading or listening. There was one new message from a number she didn't recognize. Breakfast is at 8 if you want company. Kitchen is downstairs. First door on your right. Elena looked at the clock. 7:45. She got dressed in jeans and a sweater, both from the mystery closet that somehow had her exact size. Brushed her teeth, pulled her hair into something resembling order. Then she went downstairs. The kitchen was massive. Professional-grade appliances. An island that could seat 8. Windows overlooking gardens that looked like someone actually gave a damn about them. And at the stove, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt, was Adrian Volkov making eggs. "You cook?" Elena said from the doorway. Adrian looked up. "Someone has to. Maria's off on Thursdays." He gestured to the island. "Sit. How do you like your eggs?" "Scrambled, but I can—" "Sit," he said again. Not unkind, just definitive. Elena sat, watched him move around the kitchen with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent time there. It was strange seeing him like this. Domestic. Normal. Not the dangerous man from the restaurant or the protector who'd sent people to extract her from her marriage. Just a guy making breakfast. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Better than I have in months." "Good." He plated eggs and toast, set it in front of her. "You need to eat. For the baby." Elena stared at the food. "How did you know what size clothes I'd need?" Irina's good at details. "That's not creepy at all." Adrian almost smiled. "You want privacy or you want protection? Can't have both." "What if I want neither?" "Then you wouldn't be here." He poured coffee for himself. Herbal tea for her, set it down without being asked. "Your husband's been calling everyone, your work, your friends. He filed a missing persons report." Elena's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "He what?" "Called the police last night. Said you left without explanation and he's worried about your mental state." Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. "Mentioned you might be pregnant and emotionally unstable." "That son of a—" "Police showed up at Vanessa's apartment at midnight. She covered for you, said you seemed fine, that you'd mentioned needing space, that she wasn't concerned." He sipped his coffee. "But Marcus is pushing. He's got lawyers involved, money involved. He's making noise." Elena set down her fork, appetite gone. "What do I do?" "Depends. What do you want?" "I want him to leave me alone. I want to keep my baby. I want—" Her voice cracked. "I want a life that's actually mine." "Then we make that happen." Adrian pulled out his phone, showed her a document. "Restraining order, pre-filed. We submit this. Marcus has to stay away from you. Can't call, can't text, can't show up at your work." "On what grounds?" "Emotional abuse, reproductive coercion, making medical decisions without your consent." Adrian scrolled through the document. "It's all there. Documented, dated, ready to file." Elena read through the pages. Every fight, every dismissal, every time Marcus had made her feel small or invisible or wrong for wanting basic acknowledgement. All of it written down in legal language that made it feel real instead of just her being too sensitive. "How did you—" "I have people who are very good at their jobs." Adrian set down his phone. "But this is your choice. You want to file it, we file. You want to try talking to him first, we arrange that. You want to disappear completely and start over somewhere new, we can make that happen too. This is your life, Elena. Not his, not mine, yours." Elena looked at the document, at the evidence of 3 years of slow suffocation laid out in 12-point font. "If I file this, he'll be furious." "Probably. He'll fight back. He has money, connections. He could do a lot of things," Adrian interrupted, "but he won't. Because I'll make it very clear that touching you means dealing with me. And Marcus might be successful and connected, but he's not stupid. He knows what I am. He'll back off. You can't just threaten him. Watch me." Adrian's voice went cold. "He scheduled an abortion without your consent. He tried to erase your child like it was an inconvenience. Men who do that don't get the benefit of polite conversation. They get a very clear message: stay away or suffer consequences." Elena's hands were shaking. "I don't want anyone hurt." "Nobody's getting hurt, just educated." He softened slightly. "Elena, I know this is scary, but you called me. You got in that car. You came here. Some part of you already knows what you need to do. I'm just giving you the tools to do it." She stared at the restraining order. At the exit door he was holding open. All she had to do was walk through. "File it," she heard herself say. Adrian nodded, sent a text. "Done. He'll be served by end of day." Elena waited for regret, for panic, for the voice in her head that had spent 3 years telling her to be patient, be understanding, be small. It didn't come. Instead, she felt something that might have been relief, or maybe just the absence of pressure, like she'd been holding her breath for 3 years and finally remembered how to exhale. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you rest, eat, take care of yourself." Adrian stood. "When you're ready, we figure out next steps. Job, housing, legal stuff. But that's future. Today you just exist. That's enough." Elena looked out the window at the gardens, at the morning light turning everything gold, at a world that suddenly felt bigger than the cage she'd been living in. "Thank you," she said quietly. Adrian paused in the doorway. "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see what your husband does when he gets that restraining order. Then decide if I'm worth thanking." He left her alone in the kitchen with half-eaten eggs and the first real choice she'd made in years sitting in her stomach like a stone. Her phone buzzed. "Vanessa." Police came back, asking more questions. "What should I tell them?" Elena typed, "Tell them the truth. I left my husband. I'm safe. I'm not coming back. They want to know where you are. Tell them you don't know." A pause, then, "Are you sure about this?" Elena looked around Adrian's kitchen, at the evidence of a life built on choices and consequences and refusing to apologize for taking up space. "Yes," she typed. "I'm sure." She turned off her phone and went back upstairs. Lay down on the bed that smelled like lavender and safety, put her hand on her stomach where her baby was growing cell by cell. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "I promise. We're going to be okay." And for the first time in 3 years, Elena actually believed it. The restraining order hit Marcus at his office at 3:47 p.m. Elena knew because Irina told her, standing in the doorway of the sunroom where Elena had spent the afternoon pretending to read while actually just staring at the same page for 2 hours. "He's been served," Irina said. His assistant tried to refuse the papers. Process server was persistent. Elena set down the book she wasn't reading. "How do you know all this?" "We have eyes everywhere that matter." Irina crossed her arms. He called his lawyer immediately. "They're in emergency session now. Expect him to violate the order within 24 hours. "You think he'll come here?" "No. He doesn't know where here is, but he'll find other ways to make contact." Irina's expression was unreadable. Men like your husband don't accept being told no, especially not by women they think they own. I was his wife, not his property. Try telling him that. Elena stood and walked to the window. The garden stretched out below, meticulously maintained, peaceful in a way that felt almost aggressive. Like Adrian had decided chaos wasn't allowed on his property, and nature had simply agreed. "What do I do now?" Elena asked. "Now? You exist. You eat. You take the prenatal vitamins Maria's been leaving on your nightstand." Irina moved closer. "You stop acting like you're waiting for permission to take up space. I don't. You do. You apologize every time you walk into a room. You ask if it's okay to eat food from the kitchen. Yesterday you thanked me 3 times for doing laundry. That's literally my job." Irina's voice wasn't unkind, just factual. "Whatever your husband did to you, it made you think existing was an imposition. It's not. You're allowed to be here. You're allowed to need things. Get used to it." She left before Elena could formulate a response. The rest of the afternoon crept by with the particular slowness that came from having nothing to do but think. Elena tried reading again, gave up, tried watching television, found nothing that could hold her attention, ended up in the kitchen where Maria, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and hands that looked like they'd seen decades of hard work, was preparing dinner. "You need something?" Maria asked in accented English. "I was just—" Elena stopped, took a breath. "Can I help?" Maria looked her over. "You know how to cook?" "A little. My mom taught me some things before she died." "Okay, you chop vegetables." Maria pointed to a cutting board and a pile of produce. "Small pieces, for soup." Elena washed her hands and started chopping. The rhythm was soothing, mindless, the kind of task that let her brain quiet down for the first time in days. "How long you been here?" Maria asked, working on something that involved a lot of butter and garlic. 2 days. "You running from someone bad?" Elena's knife paused mid-cut. "How did you—" "I worked for Mr. Adrian 8 years. I see what kind of people he helps. Maria glanced over. Always people running from something, usually people nobody else would help. Why does he do it? You ask him that? He told me about his sister. Maria's expression shifted. Grief flickered across her features. Katya, beautiful girl, so smart, so kind. She married the wrong man. We all see it. But she love him. Thinks she can fix him. Maria shook her head. Nobody can fix a man who don't want fixing. What happened? What always happens. He control her, make her small. When she get pregnant, he furious. Say baby ruin everything. She have the baby anyway. Little girl, 3 months old when Katya drive off that bridge. Elena's hands stilled. Adrian said it wasn't an accident. It wasn't. Please say yes, accident, ice on road. But Katya grow up here. She know how to drive in ice. She know that road. Maria's voice went hard. Her husband kill her. Maybe not with his hands, but he kill her sure as if he push her off himself. What happened to the baby? She with family now, safe, away from that man. Maria pointed at the vegetables. Keep cutting. Soup don't make itself. They worked in silence for a while. Then Maria said, Mr. Adrian, he don't forget. Every woman he help, he see his sister. He can't save Katya, but he save who he can. That's a lot of guilt to carry, Elena said quietly. Is not guilt, is purpose. Maria tasted the sauce she was making, added salt. Everybody need purpose. His just happened to be making sure women like you don't end up like women like Katya. Elena thought about that while she finished chopping, about Adrian carrying his sister's death like a weight he refused to put down, about how that grief had turned into something active instead of just destructive, about what it meant to build a life around making sure history didn't repeat. Dinner was quiet. Just Elena, Adrian, and Irina at a table that could seat 12. The food was incredible. Maria's soup, fresh bread, some kind of roasted chicken that fell apart at the touch of a fork. Elena ate more than she had in weeks, her appetite finally returning now that she wasn't living in a constant state of low-level anxiety. You look better, Adrian observed. I feel better, which is weird considering I just blew up my entire life. Your life was already blown up. You just finally noticed. He poured wine for himself and Irina. Water for Elena. Your husband tried calling here. Elena's fork stopped. How did he get this number? He didn't. He called my office, demanded to speak to me. My assistant told him I wasn't available. What did he say? That he knows you're here, that he wants his wife back, that he'll make things very difficult if I don't cooperate. Adrian's expression was neutral. I told my assistant to tell him I'd call back. I won't, but he doesn't need to know that yet. He's going to keep pushing. Let him. Adrian cut into his chicken. He can push all he wants. Doesn't mean he gets what he wants. You don't know Marcus. He's successful, connected, used to getting his way. Adrian looked up. I know exactly what he is. I've dealt with 100 men just like him. They're all the same, big in their little worlds, convinced their money and their connections make them untouchable. Then they run into someone who doesn't care about any of that, and they fall apart. You think he'll just give up? Eventually, when he realizes the cost of fighting is higher than the cost of letting go. Adrian set down his fork. But first he'll make noise, threaten, try to leverage whatever power he thinks he has. That's fine. Let him waste his energy. Meanwhile, you focus on building something new. I don't even know where to start. Start by deciding what you actually want. Not what your husband wanted for you, not what you think you're supposed to want. What you want. He leaned back. You want to go back to your job? We can arrange security. You want a different job? I have connections. You want to disappear completely and start over somewhere new? That's an option too. But you need to figure out what your life looks like without him in it. Elena stared at her plate. I want to keep my baby. That's the only thing I'm sure about. Okay, that's a start. Adrian glanced at Irina. Set up an appointment with Dr. Chen, full prenatal workup. Make sure everything's progressing normally. Already done, Irina said. Monday morning, 10 a.m. I can't afford... You're under my protection, Adrian interrupted. That includes medical care. Don't argue about it. Elena wanted to argue anyway, but the truth was she couldn't afford a doctor. Not without insurance from the job she'd stopped going to. Not without access to the bank account Marcus controlled. She was completely dependent on Adrian's generosity, and that fact sat in her stomach like lead. I need to work, she said. I can't just live here indefinitely. That's not... I need to be able to take care of myself. You will. When you're ready. Adrian stood, collecting plates. Right now, you're 8 weeks pregnant, emotionally exhausted, and running on fumes. Give yourself time to breathe before you start building the rest of your life. He carried dishes to the kitchen. Irina followed. Elena sat alone at the table, feeling like a charity case and hating it. Her phone buzzed. She turned it back on after dinner, a decision she was already regretting. Unknown number. I know where you are. Elena's blood went cold. She showed the text to Adrian when he returned. He read it, handed back the phone. He's bluffing, trying to scare you into making contact. How can you be sure? Because if he actually knew where you were, he'd already be here. Or he'd have sent police, or lawyers. He wouldn't waste time sending cryptic texts. Adrian took the phone, did something to the settings. There. Blocked. He wants to talk to you. He can do it through lawyers. What if he's not bluffing? Then we deal with it. Adrian's voice was calm, certain. Elena, I've been doing this a long time. I know how men like your husband operate. They rely on fear and intimidation because actual power requires effort. They're not willing to invest. Marcus is used to people folding when he applies pressure. You're not folding. It's making him desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. I don't want anyone hurt because of me. Nobody's getting hurt, I promise. He handed back her phone. Go get some rest. Tomorrow we start figuring out your next steps. Elena went upstairs, but she didn't sleep. Just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. Marcus showing up with police. Marcus somehow getting custody because he had money and she had nothing. Marcus convincing everyone she was unstable and taking her baby away before it was even born. The fears circled like sharks, each one sharper than the last. Around 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went downstairs. Found Adrian in what looked like a study, working on a laptop, Sasha asleep at his feet. Can't sleep? He asked without looking up. Too much in my head. Want to talk about it? Elena sat in the chair across from his desk. Sasha's tail thumped twice, but the dog didn't move. How do you do this? Do what? Help people without expecting anything back. Everyone always wants something. Adrian closed his laptop. I expect you to use this opportunity, to build something, to not waste the protection I'm offering by going back to a situation that was killing you. He paused. Is that asking too much? No, but it feels like I owe you something I can't repay. You don't owe me anything. You're not here because I'm collecting debts. You're here because nobody else was offering, and I had the resources to help. He stood, moved to a cabinet, poured himself a drink, offered her one. She shook her head. My sister didn't have anyone. Nobody helped her. Nobody saw what was happening until it was too late. I can't fix that, but I can make sure other women don't end up the same way. That's not charity. That's penance. For what? For not seeing it sooner. For not being there when she needed me. His voice was rough. For believing her when she said everything was fine because it was easier than dealing with the truth. Elena watched him drink, saw the guilt he carried written in the tension of his shoulders. It wasn't your fault. It doesn't matter. Still feels like it was. He set down the glass. Go back to bed. Try to rest. Tomorrow's going to be long. Why? Because Marcus filed an emergency custody petition. His lawyers are claiming you're mentally unstable and unfit. Hearings at 9 a.m. Elena's world tilted. He can't. There's no baby yet. There's nothing to... He's trying to establish grounds for taking the baby once it's born. Preemptive custody based on your alleged mental health issues and abandonment of the marriage. Adrian's voice was clinical, detached. It won't work. We have our own lawyers. Better ones. But you need to be prepared for him to fight dirty. I can't lose this baby. Elena's voice cracked. I can't. That's the only thing I have, the only thing that's actually mine. You're not going to lose it, I promise. Adrian moved around the desk, sat on the edge in front of her. But you need to be strong tomorrow. You need to walk into that courtroom and show the judge exactly how not unstable you are. Can you do that? Elena wiped her eyes. nodded. Yes. Good. Irina will take you shopping tomorrow morning, get you something appropriate to wear, professional, but not trying too hard. We want sympathetic, not desperate. I don't have money for Elena. Adrian's voice was firm. Stop. You're under my protection. That means I handle things. Let me handle things. She wanted to argue, to maintain some shred of independence. But the truth was she had nothing. No money, no resources. No way to fight Marcus except through Adrian's generosity. Okay, she said quietly. Get some sleep. Real sleep this time. Doctor's orders. You're not a doctor. No, but I've got one on speed dial and she'd say the same thing. He helped her up. Go. Rest. Tomorrow we win the first battle. Elena went back to her room. This time exhaustion won over anxiety. She slept hard and dreamless, her hand on her stomach, protecting the life growing there with the only certainty she had left. Morning came too fast. Irina woke her at 7 with coffee, decaf, she noted, and a breakfast tray. Eat fast. We leave in 30 minutes, Irina said. Where are we going? Shopping, then the courthouse. Irina laid out clothes on the bed. These are temporary. We'll get you something better. The temporary clothes were nicer than half of Elena's wardrobe back at the penthouse. She dressed quickly, ate what she could stomach, and followed Irina out to the SUV. They drove to a boutique in a town Elena didn't recognize, the kind of place where they knew Irina by name and didn't ask questions when she said they needed court-appropriate clothing immediately. Elena tried on a dozen outfits while Irina evaluated each one with the critical eye of someone who understood that appearance was armor. That one, Irina finally said, pointing to a navy dress. Simple. Conservative. The kind of thing that said responsible adult, not unstable flight risk. Shoes to match, minimal jewelry. Hair down, not up. We want approachable, not corporate. You've done this before, Elena observed. More times than you'd think. Irina paid without looking at the total. Let's go. We're due at the courthouse in 40 minutes. The courthouse was exactly what Elena expected. Cold, institutional, smelling like floor wax and other people's misery. Their lawyer met them outside, a woman in her 50s named Patricia Brennan who had the kind of face that suggested she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. You must be Elena, Patricia said, shaking her hand. Don't look so terrified. We're going to win this. How can you be sure? Because your husband's petition is garbage. No medical evidence, no witnesses to instability, just his word that you left suddenly and must therefore be incompetent. Patricia guided them toward the courtroom. Judge Martinson is hearing the case. She's sharp, fair, doesn't tolerate nonsense. Marcus's lawyer is going to try emotional appeals. We're going to stick to facts. They entered the courtroom. Marcus was already there with his legal team, 3 men in expensive suits who looked like they billed by the breath. He saw Elena and his expression shifted. Surprise. Then anger. Then something that might have been hurt but was probably just wounded pride. Elena sat down, kept her back straight, refused to look at him. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. Then the lawyer started talking and Elena tried to follow, but all she could hear was her own heartbeat and the occasional phrase that cut through the noise. Mentally unstable. Abandoned the marriage without warning. Concerned for the welfare of the unborn child. History of emotional fragility. Each phrase felt like a knife, twisting facts into weapons. Taking the worst moments of her marriage and using them as evidence that she was unfit. The time she'd cried during a fight. The time she'd stayed in bed all weekend after a miscarriage, Marcus had barely acknowledged. The time she'd told him she felt invisible and he'd suggested therapy like it was her problem, not theirs. All of it presented as proof she was unstable instead of proof she'd been slowly breaking under the weight of his neglect. Then Patricia stood up. Your Honor, if I may. Her voice was crisp, professional. Mr. Carter's petition relies entirely on speculation and deliberate mischaracterization of normal emotional responses to a failing marriage. Mrs. Carter did not abandon anything. She left a situation where her husband scheduled a medical procedure without her consent. That's not instability. That's self-preservation. Marcus's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Patricia continued. Furthermore, Mrs. Carter is currently under medical care, prenatal vitamins, regular checkups scheduled. She's employed, stable, and living in a safe environment. The only instability in this situation is Mr. Carter's attempt to control his wife's reproductive choices through legal intimidation. More objections, more overruling. The judge looked at Elena. Mrs. Carter, would you like to speak? Elena stood. Her legs felt like water, but she stood. I left my husband because he scheduled an abortion without telling me. I didn't know about it until the clinic called to confirm. I'm 8 weeks pregnant and I want this baby. That's not unstable. That's just... Her voice cracked. That's just wanting to be a mother. The courtroom was silent. Marcus stood. Your Honor, if I could just explain... Sit down, Mr. Carter, Judge Martinson said. Her voice was cold. I've heard enough. This petition is denied. Mrs. Carter is under no legal obligation to return to the marital home or submit to any medical procedures she doesn't consent to. Custody can be revisited after the child is born, but I'm warning you now, this kind of overreach doesn't look good in family court. The gavel came down. Elena's knees almost gave out. Patricia caught her elbow. Breathe, we won. Marcus was standing now, arguing with his lawyers in harsh whispers. He looked up, caught Elena's eye. The expression on his face was pure fury. Irina materialized at Elena's other side. Time to go. They walked out quickly. Marcus called after her, but Elena didn't stop. Didn't look back. Just kept moving until they were outside in the cold October air, and she could finally breathe. You did good, Patricia said. Really good. He's going to keep fighting, but we've established precedent. You're not unstable. You're not unfit. You're just done. What happens now? Now he decides if he wants to keep wasting money on a fight he can't win. Patricia handed her a card. Call me if he violates the restraining order. Call me if he tries anything else. Otherwise, just live your life. That's the best revenge. She left. Irina guided Elena back to the SUV. Inside, Elena finally let herself shake. That was awful, she said. Yes, but you survived it. Irina pulled out into traffic. And next time will be easier. There's going to be a next time? Probably. Men like Marcus don't give up easy. But each time he'll have less ground to stand on. Each time you'll be stronger. Irina glanced over. You did well today. Stood up, spoke clearly, didn't fall apart. That's all anyone can ask. They drove back to the estate in silence. When they arrived, Adrian was waiting. How'd it go? He asked. We won, Elena said. Then, because the adrenaline was crashing and she couldn't hold it in anymore, she started crying. Not sad crying, relief crying. The kind that came from tension finally releasing. Adrian guided her inside, sat her down, let her cry without trying to fix it or make it stop. Just waited until she was done. Sorry, Elena finally said, wiping her face. Don't be. You're allowed to feel things. He handed her tissues. Marcus looked bad in there? Furious. Good. Means we're winning. Adrian leaned back. He's going to escalate. Try other tactics, but we're ready. Whatever he throws at you, we catch it. Why are you doing all this? Really? Elena asked. I know you said it was about your sister, but there has to be more. Nobody just helps strangers like this. Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then he said, because I can. Because I have resources most people don't. Because using them to help people who need it is better than using them for nothing. He met her eyes. And because watching you walk into that restaurant looking like you were barely holding on reminded me of every time I saw Katya pretend everything was fine. I couldn't help her, but I can help you, so I am. I don't know how to repay you. Don't repay me. Just use this chance. Build something. Be someone your kid can be proud of. He stood. That's enough. Elena watched him leave, felt the weight of his expectations settle on her shoulders. Not heavy, just present. A reminder that survival wasn't enough. She had to actually live. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Dr. Chen called to confirm Monday's appointment. Vanessa texted to ask how court went. Elena's lawyer sent paperwork to review. Everything moving forward with momentum that felt both terrifying and necessary. That night, Elena stood in the bathroom looking at her reflection. She didn't look unstable, Didn't look fragile, just looked like a woman who'd made a hard choice and was living with the consequences. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, then thought maybe it was important. Hello? Elena. Marcus's voice, tight, controlled, furious underneath. We need to talk. We have a restraining order. You're not supposed to. I'm trying to save our marriage. That's not a violation. It's over, Marcus. Elena's voice was steady. I'm not coming back. Because of him? Because of Volkov? Marcus's voice rose. You think he cares about you. He's using you. Once he's done, you'll be nothing. Just another broken woman he played savior for. Better than being nothing while married to you. The line went silent. Then, you're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Elena hung up, blocked the number, sat down on the bed and let herself shake. This was her life now. Court battles and blocked numbers and living under a dangerous man's protection because her husband had turned into a stranger who thought he owned her body. But her baby was safe. She was safe. And tomorrow she'd figure out the next step. That had to be enough. Elena didn't tell Adrian about Marcus's call. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because she was tired of feeling like a problem that needed solving. Maybe because some part of her still felt guilty for blowing up her marriage, even though logically she knew she'd done nothing wrong. Or maybe because she wanted to prove, to herself, to Adrian, to everyone, that she could handle things on her own. That decision came back to haunt her 3 days later. She was in the garden with Maria, learning how to plant bulbs for spring. The older woman had declared that Elena needed fresh air and purpose, in that order, and had handed her a trowel and a bucket of tulip bulbs like it was medicine. You dig like this, Maria demonstrated. Not too deep. Bulb knows which way is up. You just give it space to grow. Elena copied the motion. Her hands were already dirty, nails caked with soil. It felt good. Real. Like she was actually doing something instead of just existing in Adrian's house like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. How long before they bloom? Elena asked. Spring, March, maybe April. You be here to see them? Elena paused, trowel halfway into the earth. I don't know. I can't stay here forever. Why not? Because it's not my house. Because I need to figure out my own life. Because... Elena stopped. Because I can't keep depending on Adrian's charity. Is not charity if he offering freely. Maria planted another bulb. And is not depending if you working. You think about that? Working for Adrian? Working for yourself. But maybe here, maybe somewhere else. But working, building. Maria gestured to the bulbs. Like these. You plant them now, they grow while you're not looking, then one day flowers. But you got to plant them first. Elena thought about that while they worked. About planting things. About futures that grew while you weren't paying attention. About whether she was actually building something or just hiding. Irina appeared at the edge of the garden. Her expression was controlled, but Elena had learned to read the micro-movements, the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand hovered near her phone. Elena, inside. Now. Elena dropped the trowel and followed. Maria didn't ask questions, just kept planting like nothing had interrupted the afternoon. Inside, Adrian was in his study with two men Elena had never seen before. They looked like Irina, controlled, dangerous, the kind of people who solve problems with efficiency rather than conversation. What's wrong? Elena asked. Adrian gestured to his laptop. On the screen was security footage from outside Sterling and Associates. The timestamp showed that morning. Elena watched herself walk into the building, except it wasn't her. Someone else. Blonde wig, similar build, dressed in clothes that looked like Elena's work wardrobe. That's not me, Elena said. I haven't been to work in over a week. We know. Adrian fast-forwarded the footage, showed the fake Elena leaving an hour later, getting into a car, the license plate visible for just a second before the vehicle disappeared into traffic. Marcus's car, one of the men said. His accent was thick. Russian, Elena thought. Registered to his company. We traced it to a parking garage in Midtown. Driver was professional, trained. He's escalating, Irina said, creating narrative that you're unstable, showing up at work disheveled, behaving erratically, building evidence for another custody attempt. Elena's knees went weak. She sat down hard in the nearest chair. But I can prove I wasn't there. Security footage here. Witnesses. I was planting bulbs with Maria, for God's sake. You can prove it, but mud sticks. Adrian closed the laptop. By the time you disprove it, the story's already out there. Your coworkers have seen it. HR has documented it. It becomes part of the narrative Marcus is building. So what do I do? You let us handle it. Adrian's voice was flat, final. Marcus wants to play dirty? Fine. We play dirty better. What does that mean? It means we stop being reactive and start being proactive. He looked at the two men. Find out who he hired. Find out what else he's planning. And make it very clear that if he continues down this path, there will be consequences he won't like. The men nodded and left without a word. Elena's hands were shaking. You're not going to hurt him. No, but I'm going to make sure he understands that hurting you has a cost. Adrian poured her water from a pitcher on his desk. Elena, you need to understand something. Marcus isn't going to stop, not until he either gets what he wants or realizes the price is too high. Right now he thinks he can outlast us. We need to convince him otherwise. How? By showing him exactly what he's been doing, who he's been working with, where his money actually comes from. Adrian's smile was cold. Your husband's business isn't as clean as he thinks it is. We dig deep enough, we'll find things he doesn't want anyone knowing. Use that as leverage. That's blackmail. That's survival. Your choice is let him destroy you piece by piece with legal manipulation and character assassination, or we fight back with information that makes him reconsider his strategy. Adrian leaned forward. I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I'm asking you to let me do what I'm good at so you can focus on what matters, staying safe and healthy. Elena stared into her water glass. When does this end? When do I get to just live my life without constantly looking over my shoulder? When Marcus accepts that you're not coming back, when he moves on, when the cost of fighting exceeds the benefit. Adrian's voice gentled slightly. I know this isn't what you wanted, but this is where you are. We can either handle it or let him win. Your call? Elena thought about the fake version of herself walking into her office building, about Marcus orchestrating it, about how far he was willing to go to maintain control over a woman he'd barely noticed when they were actually married. Handle it, she said quietly. Do what you need to do. Adrian nodded, pulled out his phone and made a call in rapid Russian. Elena didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Business, cold, efficient. When he hung up, he said, Go rest. This is handled now. You don't need to worry about it. But Elena couldn't rest. Couldn't stop thinking about what Adrian meant by consequences. Couldn't shake the feeling that she was slowly being pulled deeper into a world she didn't understand. That night, she found herself in the library Adrian had mentioned but she'd never explored. Floor-to-ceiling books, comfortable chairs, a fireplace that someone, probably Maria, had lit earlier. It was the kind of room that invited you to disappear into stories and forget the world outside. Elena pulled down a book at random. Didn't even look at the title, just opened it and tried to read. The words blurred. Her mind kept circling back to Marcus, to the fake Elena, to whatever Adrian was planning. Can't focus? She looked up. Adrian stood in the doorway, still wearing the same clothes from earlier. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from carrying weight nobody else could see. I keep thinking about what you're doing, Elena admitted. About what consequences means in your world. It means making sure Marcus understands there are lines he can't cross without repercussions. Adrian crossed to the bar cart in the corner, poured himself something amber. Your husband's been laundering money through his consulting firm for the past 2 years. Small amounts, subtle, but illegal. Elena's book slipped from her hands. What? One of his major clients is a shell corporation linked to organized crime. Not my organization. Different players, but dirty money nonetheless. Adrian took a sip. He's been taking their cash, running it through legitimate-looking consulting contracts, and cleaning it on the other side. Makes about $200,000 a year doing it. How do you know this? Because I make it my business to know things about people who threaten people under my protection. He set down his glass. I'm not going to turn him in. That would take time and you'd get dragged into it. But I'm going to make sure he knows I know. and that if he continues harassing you, those records find their way to the FBI. Elena felt sick. I was married to him for 3 years. I had no idea. Most people don't see what's right in front of them if they're not looking for it. Adrian moved to the fireplace, stared into the flames. You thought you married someone successful and stable. He thought he married someone who'd stay quiet and not ask questions. Worked great until you developed a spine. I always had a spine. You did. You just forgot how to use it. He glanced back at her. You're remembering now. That's what scares him. Not losing you, losing control. What happens when he gets the message about the money laundering? He'll call his lawyer. They'll try to figure out how much I actually know. They'll realize it's enough to end his career and possibly put him in prison. Then he'll make a choice, keep fighting and risk everything, or walk away and cut his losses. And if he chooses to keep fighting, then I make good on the threat and he goes down. Adrian's voice was matter of fact. But he won't. Marcus is a lot of things, but he's not stupid. He'll back off. Elena wanted to believe that, wanted to think this nightmare would end with Marcus simply giving up and disappearing from her life. But she knew him better than Adrian did, knew his pride, his need to win, his absolute inability to accept being told no. He won't stop, she said quietly. Not unless he's forced to. Then we force him. Adrian turned to face her fully. Elena, I need you to trust me. I've been doing this a long time. I know how to make men like your husband back down, but I need you to stop second-guessing every move. Can you do that? Elena met his eyes, saw something there she hadn't noticed before. Not just determination, something more personal. Like he needed this to work not just for her sake, but for his own. Okay, she said. I trust you. He nodded, started to leave, stopped. For what it's worth, you're stronger than my sister was. She stayed until it killed her. You left while you still could. That takes courage most people don't have. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with the fire and the weight of his words. The next morning, Elena woke to her phone ringing. Dr. Chen's office reminding her about her appointment in an hour. She'd completely forgotten. Irina drove her into the city. The medical building was in a nice neighborhood, the kind where doctors' offices looked like spas, and nobody talked about money because everyone just had it. Dr. Chen was younger than Elena expected, maybe 40, efficient but kind. She ran through the standard questions, last period, symptoms, family history, with the brisk professionalism of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Then the ultrasound. Elena lay on the exam table, her shirt pushed up, cold gel on her stomach. The wand pressed down and suddenly the screen filled with grainy black and white images that looked like weather patterns. There, Dr. Chen said, pointing to a small flicker. That's the heartbeat. Elena stared at the screen. That tiny pulse of light was her baby, her child, the reason she'd blown up her entire life. Everything looks good, Dr. Chen continued. Development is right on track for 9 weeks. Due date looks like late May, early June. Is the baby okay? Like, healthy? As far as I can tell, yes, but we'll keep monitoring. Dr. Chen handed her tissues to wipe off the gel. You're under a lot of stress. That's not ideal, but it's also not uncommon. The important thing is you're safe now. You're eating. You're resting. Those are the things the baby needs. What if the father tries to... Elena stopped. What if he tries to take the baby when it's born? Dr. Chen's expression shifted, professional mask slipping just enough to show real concern. Legally, he'd have to establish paternity and petition for custody. Given what you've told me about his behavior, no judge is going to grant custody to someone who tried to coerce you into an abortion. But document everything, every call, every text, every attempt at contact. That paper trail matters. Elena dressed and left with a folder full of prenatal information and a photo from the ultrasound. That tiny flicker captured in black and white. Proof of life. In the car, Irina glanced at the photo. You're keeping that? Of course. Be careful who you show it to. Becomes evidence in custody fights. I'm showing it to my child someday, Elena said firmly. To prove they were wanted, that I fought for them before they were even born. Irina smiled slightly. Good. That's the kind of thinking that wins wars. They stopped for lunch at a small cafe where Irina claimed nobody would recognize them. Elena ordered soup and bread, her appetite finally returning now that the morning sickness was fading. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Why do you work for Adrian? Someone with your skills could work anywhere." Irina was quiet for a moment, then, "He saved my life. Literally. I was working for someone else, someone who didn't value loyalty or people or anything except profit. I wanted out, but leaving that world isn't simple. Adrian made it possible, gave me work that didn't compromise what little ethics I had left, protected me when my old boss came looking. I owe him everything." That's a lot of loyalty. He's earned it. Every day he earns it. Irina took a sip of her coffee. People think men like Adrian are monsters. Sometimes they're right. But sometimes monsters are the only thing standing between you and worse monsters. That's the world we live in. Elena thought about that. About good and evil being less clear than she'd always believed. About how the man feeding her and protecting her and paying for her medical care was also someone who could make people disappear and probably had. Her phone buzzed. "Vanessa, are you okay? Weird rumors at work. Someone said you came in looking rough, but I know you haven't been here." Elena typed back, "Marcus is playing games, sending someone who looks like me. Don't believe anything unless you hear it directly from me. This is insane. Do you need anything? Just keep being my friend. That's enough. Always. Love you. Love you too." Elena put away her phone, felt tears prickling behind her eyes. Vanessa was the only piece of her old life that felt worth keeping. Everything else, the job, the apartment, the marriage, could burn for all she cared. When they got back to the estate, one of Adrian's men was waiting, the same one from before. Victor, she'd learned his name was. He spoke to Irina in rapid Russian. Her expression darkened. "What is it?" Elena asked. "Marcus hired a private investigator. They found this place. Have photos of you coming and going." Irina's voice was tight. "They're building a case that you're living with Adrian, trying to paint it as an affair that predated your separation." Elena's stomach dropped. "But that's not... We never... Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what they can make look true." Irina pulled out her phone. "We need to talk to Adrian." They found him in a meeting with men Elena recognized as business associates. Legitimate ones, based on their suits and the laptop presentations visible through the open door. Irina knocked anyway. Adrian excused himself. Listened to Victor's report. His expression went cold. "Where are the photos now?" he asked. "Private investigator's office, cloud backup. Probably copies sent to Marcus's lawyers already." "Get them. All of them." Adrian's voice was steel. "And make sure the investigator understands that his services are no longer required, permanently." "Adrian," Elena started, "you can't just..." "I can and I will." He turned to her. "They're trying to destroy your reputation. Make you look like an adulteress who abandoned her marriage for another man. That narrative gives Marcus leverage in court. We're not letting that happen. But I can prove... You can't prove something didn't happen. That's the problem with this kind of accusation. Once it's out there, it sticks." He looked back at Victor. "Handle it. Today." Victor nodded and left. Elena's hands were shaking. "This is getting out of control. This is Marcus getting desperate, which means we're close to breaking him." Adrian guided her away from the office. "I know this is scary, but every move he makes, he's showing his hand. We know his strategy now. We counter it." "By doing what? Making people disappear?" "The investigator isn't disappearing. He's getting a very generous offer to relocate and forget he ever took this job." Adrian's voice was patient. "Elena, I'm not a killer. I don't hurt people unless they hurt people under my protection, but I do make problems go away. That's what I'm doing here. And if Marcus doesn't stop, then we show him what we know about his money laundering. We show his board of directors, his clients, his friends. We make it clear that continuing this path means losing everything he's built." Adrian stopped walking, faced her. "I will protect you, whatever it takes. That's a promise." Elena wanted to believe him, but she was starting to realize that protection came with costs she hadn't anticipated. That living under Adrian's shield meant living in his world, with his rules, where problems got solved with methods she'd never had to consider before. That night, she lay in bed with her hand on her stomach, the ultrasound photo on her nightstand, that tiny flicker of life. Her baby. The reason she was doing all of this. I'm sorry, she whispered to the photo. I'm sorry you're getting dragged into this mess. I'm sorry your father is... She stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus would be this baby's father. Biologically, anyway. But he'd also be the man who'd tried to erase them, who'd scheduled an abortion without consent, who'd hired investigators and actors and God knew what else to destroy Elena's credibility. What kind of father was that? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, then thought maybe it was important. Hello? Elena. Marcus's voice, different this time, softer. Please, can we just talk? Really talk? We have a restraining order. I'm trying to save our marriage. That's not... There's no marriage left to save. Elena's voice was steady. You scheduled an abortion without asking me. You hired someone to impersonate me at work. You're building a fake case that I'm having an affair. What part of that sounds like someone trying to save a marriage? Silence. Then, I panicked. The baby. It wasn't planned. I wasn't ready. I made a bad call. You made a decision about my body without my permission. That's not a bad call. That's assault. Elena, please, I love you. I know I haven't shown it well, but I do. Come home. We'll figure this out together. You don't love me. You love the idea of a wife who doesn't argue or have opinions or want things you haven't approved. Elena sat up in bed. I'm done being that person. I'm keeping my baby. I'm building my own life. You need to move on. Is it because of Volkov? Marcus's voice turned sharp. Because you think he cares about you? He doesn't. He's using you for whatever game he's playing. Once you're not useful anymore, Adrian has been more present in 2 weeks than you were in 3 years. He's protected me, helped me, treated me like a person instead of an inconvenience. Elena's voice rose. Whatever his motivations are, they're better than yours ever were. You're making a mistake. Then it's my mistake to make. Stop calling. Stop investigating. Stop trying to control me. We're done, Marcus. Accept it. She hung up, blocked the number, sat in the darkness with her heart pounding and her hands shaking. A knock on her door. Soft. Tentative. Come in, Elena called. Adrian entered. He didn't ask if she was okay, just sat on the edge of her bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. Heard you on the phone, he said. You handled that well. I don't feel like I handled it well. I feel like I'm drowning. You're not drowning. You're fighting. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment. Marcus called to test you, see if you'd break. You didn't. That matters. When does this end? Soon. Victor confirmed the investigator took our offer. He's relocating to Seattle, taking his files with him. Marcus's lawyers will receive a very thorough breakdown of his financial irregularities tomorrow morning. After that, it's his move. And if he still doesn't stop, then we escalate. But he will. I've seen this pattern 100 times. Men like Marcus fight until the cost exceeds the benefit. Tomorrow, the cost gets very high. Elena looked at him. Really looked. At the man who'd inserted himself into her disaster of a life and refused to let her drown, who'd given her safety and space and the chance to breathe, who carried his sister's death like a weight but transformed it into purpose. Why do you really care? She asked. And don't say it's just about your sister. There's something else. Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then, I told you I couldn't save Katya. What I didn't tell you was that I knew. Months before she died, I knew something was wrong. She'd come visit with bruises she couldn't explain. She'd lost weight, stopped smiling, and I ignored it. Because acknowledging it meant confronting her husband, meant making waves, meant possibly making things worse. His voice went rough. So I did nothing. Told myself she was an adult making her own choices, that it wasn't my place to interfere. And she died thinking nobody cared enough to help. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? I had resources, power, connections. I could have done something, anything. Instead, I waited until it was too late. He looked at her. I won't make that mistake again. Every woman I help is a chance to not be the person I was when my sister needed me. You asked why I care? That's why. Because this time I'm not standing by watching someone disappear. Elena's throat was tight. Thank you for seeing me, for helping, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Wait until this is over. He stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. After he left, Elena lay back down. Thought about Katya. About all the women who'd needed help and gotten silence instead. About how Adrian had turned his guilt into something that actually helped people instead of just consuming him. Maybe that's what strength looked like. Not perfection, not fearlessness. Just deciding that your worst moments wouldn't define your whole life. Elena fell asleep with that thought. And for the first time since leaving Marcus, she didn't dream about the past. She dreamed about the future. About a child with her eyes and her stubbornness. About a life built on choices instead of compliance. About finally being visible. The package arrived at Marcus's office at 9:47 a.m. Elena knew because Irina told her, watching security footage from cameras Elena hadn't known existed. Marcus's assistant signed for it, brought it to his desk, left him alone to open it. Elena sat in Adrian's study, watching her husband's face on a screen as he pulled out the contents. Financial records, bank statements, emails, all the evidence of his money laundering laid out in chronological order with helpful annotations highlighting the illegal parts. Marcus went pale, then red, then reached for his phone. He's calling his lawyer, Irina said, adjusting the audio feed. Elena shouldn't be watching this, shouldn't be listening, but she couldn't look away. This was the man she'd loved once, the man she'd promised forever to, now reduced to a panicking figure on a screen, realizing his entire life could collapse. She felt nothing, not satisfaction, not guilt, just a strange, hollow emptiness where her feelings for him used to be. Marcus's lawyer arrived within the hour. They spoke in urgent whispers, went through the documents page by page, made calls to other lawyers, accountants, someone who was probably a crisis management specialist. By noon, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. Adrian's voice filled the office. Mr. Carter, I assume you received my package. Marcus's hands clenched. What do you want? For you to understand the situation you're in. Those records? I have copies. Multiple copies, in multiple secure locations. They stay private as long as you stay away from Elena. You're blackmailing me. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference. Adrian's tone was conversational, polite, like they were discussing weather. Elena filed for divorce this morning. The papers will be served this afternoon. You're going to sign them. No contest, no custody fight. Clean break. I'm not signing anything until, yes, you are. Because if you don't, those records go to the FBI, the IRS, your board of directors, every client you've ever had. Your career ends, your freedom ends, your entire life ends. Or you sign some papers and walk away with your reputation intact. Your choice. Elena watched Marcus's face, saw the calculation, the fury, the slow, terrible realization that he'd lost. She's my wife, Marcus said, voice tight. My baby. She was never yours. She was just with you. And the baby? You tried to erase it. You don't get to claim it now. Adrian's voice went cold. Sign the papers, Marcus. Move on. Find someone else to control. Elena's done. The line went dead. Marcus sat in silence. His lawyer said something Elena couldn't hear. Marcus shook his head. Then, slowly, he gathered the documents and shoved them into his briefcase. He's going to sign, Irina said. He knows when he's beaten. Elena stood, walked to the window, looked out at the gardens where tulip bulbs were buried, waiting for spring. It's really over, she said. Almost. Irina closed the laptop. He'll fight the divorce terms. Try to minimize what you get. But he won't fight the divorce itself. Not when the alternative is prison. I don't want his money. I just want him gone. You're entitled to half of everything. Community property. You were married 3 years. Worked while he built his business. You get half. Irina's voice was firm. Don't give up what you're owed because you feel guilty. He doesn't deserve your guilt. Elena thought about that. About the penthouse she'd never felt at home in. The designer clothes she'd never chosen. The life Marcus had built that she'd been expected to inhabit without actually participating in. I want enough to start over, Elena said. A place of my own. Money to support the baby. That's it. Then that's what we ask for. Irina stood. Patricia's handling it. She's good. Won't let Marcus walk away paying nothing. The divorce papers were served at 2:15 p.m. Marcus signed them at 4:30. No argument, no theatrics, just his signature on a line that ended 3 years of marriage with the stroke of a pen. Elena cried when Patricia called with the news. Not sad crying, relief crying, the kind that came from a weight finally lifting. Adrian found her in the garden, sitting on a bench Maria had pointed out was good for thinking. Sasha lay at her feet, the dog's massive head resting on Elena's shoes like an anchor. Heard the news, Adrian said. It's done. He signed. How do you feel? Elena laughed, watery and rough. I don't know. Free? Terrified? Both? She wiped her eyes. I thought I'd feel different, like something would change the moment it was official, but I just feel tired. That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline for weeks. Now that the immediate threat is over, you're crashing. Adrian sat beside her. Give yourself time. It'll catch up eventually. What happens now? I can't stay here forever. I need to figure out my own life. So figure it out. Nobody's rushing you. He was quiet for a moment. You could stay. Work for me. Legitimate work. I need someone good with analysis, and I hear you're excellent at it. Elena looked at him. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you options. You want to go back to consulting? I have connections. You want to try something new? I can facilitate that. You want to work for me? The position's yours. But you need to decide what you actually want instead of just reacting to what other people expect. I don't know what I want. I've spent so long being what Marcus needed that I forgot how to want things for myself. Then start small. What do you want for dinner? What do you want to do tomorrow? What do you want to name the baby? Adrian's voice was gentle. Build it piece by piece. Eventually the big answers get easier. Elena thought about that. About starting with small choices and working up to the big ones. About learning to want things again without guilt or apology. I want to stay, she heard herself say. Not forever, but for now. While I figure things out, if that's okay. More than okay. Adrian stood. Come on. Maria's making something that smells incredible, and she'll be offended if we're late. Dinner was loud. Victor was there with another man Elena hadn't met. They argued about soccer in a mix of Russian and English, while Maria scolded them for talking with their mouths full. Irina rolled her eyes, but Elena could see the affection underneath. This was Adrian's family, not blood, just people he'd collected who'd become essential. Elena found herself laughing at something Victor said. Real laughter, the kind she hadn't experienced in years. It felt strange, foreign, but also right. After dinner, she helped Maria clean up despite the older woman's protests. You don't need to do this, Maria said. It's my job. I know, but I want to help. I need to feel useful. Maria studied her, then nodded. Okay, you dry. I wash. They worked in comfortable silence. Then Maria said, You staying? For now. Good. House is better with you here, less quiet. Maria handed her a plate. Mr. Adrian, he smile more when you around. It's good for him. Elena felt heat creep up her neck. It's not like that. I know, but maybe one day, Maria shrugged. Or maybe not. Either way, you good for him. He good for you. That's enough. Elena thought about that later, lying in bed with her hand on her stomach, about Adrian and whatever was growing between them that neither of them had named. It wasn't romance, not exactly, but it was something, trust maybe, or just the recognition that they understood each other in ways that didn't require explanation. Her baby kicked for the first time that night. A flutter so slight Elena almost missed it. She pressed her hand harder, waiting. It happened again, tiny, insistent, alive. Hey, Elena whispered. I'm your mom. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I promise I'm trying. I promise you'll be wanted, safe, loved. Her voice cracked. I promise you won't grow up invisible. The weeks that followed were strange. Elena started working for Adrian's company, actual legitimate shipping logistics that required her analytical skills and paid better than Sterling and Associates ever had. She found an apartment in the city, small but hers, that Adrian's people helped her furnish. She started divorce proceedings that Marcus's lawyers dragged out but couldn't stop. She built a life, piece by piece, choice by choice. By December, Elena was showing. A small bump that she stopped trying to hide. She bought maternity clothes that actually fit, decorated the nursery in her apartment with colors she chose, made plans for a future that was finally, actually hers. Marcus tried calling once. Elena didn't answer. He sent flowers with a card that said he was sorry and wanted to talk. Elena threw them away. He was the past. She was building toward something else. Vanessa visited one Saturday, bearing coffee, decaf for Elena, and opinions. "You look different," Vanessa said, studying her. "Good different. Like you're actually here instead of just going through motions." "I feel different." Elena poured the coffee. "I don't know how to explain it. Like I was walking around half asleep for 3 years and suddenly I'm awake. It's called living instead of surviving." Vanessa took a sip. "So what's the deal with Volkov? Everyone at work has theories." "There's no deal. He helped me when nobody else would. Now I work for him. That's it." "You work for a man who runs half the underground in New York. I work for a man who gave me a chance when I had nothing, who protected me when my husband tried to destroy me, who never asked for anything except that I actually live instead of just existing." Elena met her friend's eyes. "I know what he is. I also know what he's done for me. Both things can be true." Vanessa was quiet, then, "Are you happy?" "I'm getting there. Ask me again in 6 months." "Fair enough." Vanessa stood. "I'm glad you're okay. Really okay. You deserve it." After she left, Elena sat in the apartment she'd chosen and felt something close to peace. Not perfect, not finished, but hers. The baby kicked, harder now, regular enough that Elena had started recognizing patterns. "What do you think?" she said to her stomach. "You ready for this?" "Because I'm still figuring it out." Her phone rang. Adrian. "You busy?" he asked. "Never too busy. What's up?" "Come to dinner tomorrow. The estate. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" "Marcus's firm is under federal investigation. Turns out once we started digging, other people did too. He's looking at serious charges." Elena should feel something about that. Satisfaction, maybe? Or guilt? But mostly she just felt tired. "Did you?" "We gave them the information. What they did with it is on them." Adrian paused. "He made choices, Elena. Choices that hurt people. You, his clients, everyone he touched. This is just consequences catching up." "Will he go to prison?" "Probably. White-collar charges usually end in plea deals, but his lawyer's not optimistic." Another pause. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks he deserves it. Part of me just feels sad that it came to this." Elena looked out her window at the city lights. "Mostly, I just want it to be over. I want to stop thinking about him and focus on what's ahead." "Then that's what you do. Come tomorrow. Eat Maria's cooking. Let the rest sort itself out." Elena agreed and hung up. Sat in her quiet apartment and thought about Marcus. About the man she'd married versus the man he'd become. Or maybe he'd always been that man and she'd just refused to see it. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. The next evening, Elena drove to the estate. Her own car now, bought with her own money from her own job. Small victories that added up to something bigger. Maria met her at the door with a hug that nearly lifted Elena off her feet. "Look at you, baby is growing." Maria patted Elena's stomach. "You eating enough?" "Constantly, the baby demands it." "Good, come." Dinner almost ready. The dining room was full. Victor and his friends, Irina, Adrian at the head of the table, all of them looking up when Elena entered. "There she is," Adrian said. "Sit, we're waiting on you." Elena sat, looked around at these people who'd become something like family, who'd protected her and supported her and never made her feel like an imposition. "What are we celebrating?" she asked. "New beginnings," Adrian said. He raised his glass. "To Elena, who walked into my restaurant looking lost and walked out looking found. To her baby, who's lucky to have a mother who fights. And to the future, which is always better than the past." Everyone drank. Elena felt tears prickling but didn't try to hide them. "Thank you," she said, "all of you, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for helping me remember what it feels like to actually live." "You did the hard part," Irina said. "We just gave you space to do it." Dinner was loud and warm, and everything Elena had been missing without knowing it. Stories and laughter and arguments about nothing important. The kind of meal that fed something deeper than hunger. After, Adrian walked her out to her car. "You're doing well," he observed. "Thanks to you." "Thanks to you. I just opened doors. You walked through them." He leaned against her car. "What's next? You figured that out yet?" "Next is having this baby, making sure they're healthy, building a life where they feel safe and wanted." Elena paused. "And maybe one day, when I'm ready, figuring out what love looks like when it's not slow poison." "You'll get there. You've got time." "What about you? What's next for Adrian Volkov?" He smiled, rare and genuine. "Keep doing what I do. Help people who need it. Build things that last. Maybe one day find something that makes me feel the way you feel when you talk about your baby." "You will. You're too stubborn not to." Learn from the best. He opened her car door. "Drive safe. Text when you get home." Elena drove back to the city with the radio on and the windows cracked. Let the cold air clear her head. Thought about the life she was building. The baby growing inside her. The future spreading out like possibility. Her phone buzzed at a red light. Unknown number. She almost didn't look. Then did. "I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. M." Elena stared at the message. The first real apology Marcus had ever given her. Too late. Too small. But still there. She deleted it without responding. Some apologies didn't deserve acknowledgement. Some bridges were better burned than crossed. Elena drove home to her apartment, made tea, sat on her couch with her hand on her stomach, and let herself imagine the future. A baby with her dark hair, late nights and early mornings, teaching someone how to be strong and soft at the same time, building a life where love didn't require losing yourself. The baby kicked. Elena laughed. "I know," she said. "I'm excited too." The months passed. Elena's stomach grew. Marcus went to trial and took a plea deal. 3 years minimum security, restitution to his victims, permanent suspension of his business licenses. He'd be out before the baby started school, but he'd never be who he was. Elena felt nothing when she heard, just relief that it was done. She worked through her pregnancy. Light duties toward the end, but Adrian never pushed her to stop. Just made accommodations and let her decide what she could handle. Vanessa threw her a baby shower, small, just a few friends and Maria, who cried and brought enough food to feed 30 people. Elena opened gifts and felt surrounded by love that asked for nothing in return. In late May, 2 weeks before her due date, Elena's water broke at 3 in the morning. She called Irina, who arrived in 15 minutes with a bag already packed. They drove to the hospital in comfortable silence, Elena breathing through contractions and trying not to panic. "You're going to be fine," Irina said. "You've handled worse than this. Pretty sure childbirth is objectively worse than divorce proceedings. Different kind of pain. This one ends with something good." Labor was long, brutal. Every terrible thing people said about childbirth turned out to be true. Elena screamed at nurses and squeezed Irina's hand hard enough to leave marks and wondered if she was going to die. But then, after 18 hours of hell, the doctor said, "One more push," and suddenly there was crying, high-pitched and indignant, and the most beautiful sound Elena had ever heard. "It's a girl," the doctor said, holding up a tiny, angry, perfect human. They put her on Elena's chest, all 7 pounds of her, dark hair, eyes that would probably be brown, tiny fists waving like she was ready to fight the world. Elena looked down at her daughter and felt something break open inside her chest. Not breaking bad. Breaking open. Making room for love so big it didn't fit inside her ribcage. "Hi," Elena whispered. "I'm your mom. I've been waiting to meet you." The baby stopped crying, looked at Elena with unfocused eyes, seemed to recognize her voice. "You're safe," Elena said. "You're wanted. You're loved. I promise. I promise you'll never be invisible." Irina took photos, called Adrian. Within an hour, Maria arrived with food nobody would eat and tears streaming down her face. Victor showed up with flowers. Adrian came last, slipping into the room quietly. "She's beautiful," he said, looking at the baby sleeping in Elena's arms. "She's perfect." Elena adjusted the blanket. "I'm naming her Katya, after your sister." if that's okay. Adrian went very still, then he nodded. Couldn't speak, just nodded. She would have been proud of you, Elena said quietly, of what you built from your grief, how you turned loss into protection for people who needed it. Thank you, Adrian managed, for remembering her, for this. He left quickly. Elena understood. Some emotions were too big for witnesses. The next days were a blur. Learning to feed Katya, learning her cries, learning what kind of mother she'd be, sleep-deprived and terrified and completely in love. Vanessa visited and held the baby with the careful grip of someone who'd never touched an infant before. She looks like you, Vanessa said. Thank God. I was worried she'd look like Marcus. Even if she did, she'd still be yours. Biology doesn't determine who matters. Elena thought about that, about Marcus in prison, about whether he'd ever meet his daughter, about whether she even wanted him to. She'd sent one message through his lawyer, a photo of Katya with the caption, "Your daughter, healthy, safe, loved, thought you should know she exists." Marcus had responded through the same lawyer. Can I see her? Elena was still deciding. Part of her thought every child deserved to know their father. Part of her thought some fathers didn't deserve to know their children. She'd figure it out. Eventually. When Katya was old enough to have opinions. For now, it was enough to keep her safe and fed and wrapped in the kind of love that didn't require losing yourself to give. 6 weeks after Katya was born, Elena went back to work. Part-time. Remote when possible. Adrian had restructured her position to accommodate motherhood without making it feel like charity. She worked from her apartment with Katya sleeping in a bassinet beside her desk, analyzed shipping routes and logistics while her daughter made small noises, built a career and raised a baby and proved you could do both without perfect balance, just persistent effort. By fall, Elena had saved enough to put a down payment on a small house outside the city. Nothing fancy. Just 2 bedrooms and a yard where Katya could eventually play. A place that was entirely theirs. Adrian helped her move, showed up with Victor and a truck, and muscles that made the whole process take 3 hours instead of 3 days. You didn't have to do this, Elena said, watching them carry boxes. I know, but I wanted to. Adrian set down a box marked kitchen. You're doing good work, building something real. I like being part of that. You've been part of it from the beginning. Then let me be part of the next chapter too. He looked around the house. You need anything? Security system, references for contractors, someone to install the car seat properly? You call. Adrian. Elena put a hand on his arm. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when nobody else did. For protecting me when I couldn't protect myself. For giving me space to become someone I'm proud of. You did all of that yourself. I just held the door open. You did more than that. You showed me what it looks like when someone actually cares. Not controlling, not possessive, just caring because you want to, not because you expect something back. Adrian was quiet. Then he said, You and Katya, you're safe here. But you know I'm here if you need anything, always. I know, and that means everything. He left with Victor, the house suddenly quiet. Elena walked through rooms that smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Katya slept in her carrier, oblivious to the significance of the moment. This was theirs, built from nothing, from the ashes of a marriage that had nearly destroyed her, from the protection of a dangerous man who turned out to be the safest person she'd ever known. Elena picked up her daughter, held her close, looked out the window at the yard where tulips would bloom next spring from bulbs she'd plant herself. Look at this, Elena whispered to Katya. This is ours. Nobody else's, just ours. The baby yawned, completely unimpressed. Elena laughed, put her daughter down for a nap, started unpacking boxes. Built her life piece by piece, each choice hers, each decision made from strength instead of fear. That night, after Katya was asleep and the house was quiet, Elena stood in her kitchen drinking tea and thinking about the past year. About the woman who'd walked into a restaurant looking for somewhere to hide. About how that woman had become someone who owned a house and raised a baby and worked a job she was good at. About how invisible had become visible. Her phone buzzed. Adrian, house looks good. You settling in okay? Yeah, feels like home. Good. That's what it should feel like. Thank you. For everything. Stop thanking me. You earned this. Elena smiled, set down her phone, looked around at the life she'd built. He was wrong. She hadn't earned it. She'd fought for it, clawed her way out of a situation that was killing her and refused to go back even when it was terrifying. She'd chosen herself and her baby over comfort and familiarity. She'd learned to want things and demand space and exist without apology. That wasn't earning, that was surviving. And then, slowly, living. Outside, the moon rose over her yard, over the neighborhood where she'd build a life for Katya, over the city where Adrian was probably still working, protecting other women who needed someone to see them. Elena thought about his sister, about Katya who died because nobody helped, about baby Katya sleeping upstairs, named after a woman she'd never meet, but whose story had saved her mother's life. I won't forget, Elena whispered to the night. I won't forget what it cost to get here. I won't forget the people who helped, and I won't let your daughter grow up thinking she has to disappear to deserve love. The house settled around her. New foundation, new walls, new possibility. Elena finished her tea, checked on Katya one more time. Then she went to bed in a house that was hers, in a life that was hers, with a future that stretched out bright and uncertain, and finally, completely hers. She'd been invisible for 3 years, but not anymore. Now she was home.